start the recording and we can kick off with just a couple of reminders from my end and a couple of announcements as well before we dive into all your questions. Would love to hear what you've been working on in Semantic Kernel. Just wanted to remind everyone, I know both of you have been on lots of times. This is our monthly APAC office hours call. It's the second Wednesday monthly that we have this, but interim of these monthly calls, we want to make sure that if there is any questions or feedback that you have, we use GitHub discussions very heavily to go through and get back to community for feedback. And if you do have any other questions, always feel free to reach out and email me as well. There's a couple of updates we have in terms of releases. Actually, Evan, do you want to dive into the Python release? I know there's some new functionality with Bedrock agents and a new connector as well that has come in. Is there anything that you want to highlight in particular with this new Python release?
Yeah, I mean it's we've had Bedrock agents in for a couple versions now, and we just wanted to give some samples to show how to retrieve them. If you already have existing Bedrock agents, and then create the semantic kernel agent abstraction around that. For the memory store, we've been chugging along on getting the memory store improvements and abstractions out for other memory stores. So this particular release introduces the face connector that Edward's been working on, which is a great alternative to other memory stores that we have. Kind of a Under the enhancements and improvements, there was a breaking change introduced by the underlying Azure SDK, and so we weren't aware of that until we got bug reports. And so this release fixes an argument that was changed from assistant ID to agent ID. And so that gets up and running again. So if you're using Azure AI agents within SK, please use Python 1.24 and do a pip upgrade just so you get the latest Azure AI projects package too, which is at beta 7 right now. So that's it for this particular release.
Perfect. And then there is a blog post as well with some of our Bedrock agents. I put in chat a bunch of links to releases, and it also has to our Semantic Kernel blog. And so there's a good walkthrough of samples that Evan had highlighted there as well. And then on the .NET side, no, it's been a little bit since we've been able to sync. I just grabbed the most recent 1.41.0, but I think one big thing that I do want to highlight as well, and we'll cover a bit more in our updates, is the agent framework is at release candidate, and so there may still be some breaking changes that we have, but there is that kind of move towards GA that we're on with that as well. So I know we've had a lot of folks in the past that have had questions about it being experimental, of could this completely go away, and just want to let everyone know that we're on our path to GA with agents and with the agent framework as well. With this release in particular, there are some update packages for Semantic Kernel and MEVD. There is some additional mechanisms to be able to access HTTP request options. And then from vector data, there's some updates that we've been going through as a team. And then similarly to what Evan had mentioned with the Bedrock agent samples, there's some updates within .NET as well. So if you haven't had a chance to look at either of these new releases, we recommend you take the time to go through them. If you have any questions, please let us know. And then, as always, if you are looking for more in-depth backlog by bucket, if there is a specific feature or ask you're looking for, this is a really good place to come. But I've linked in the bottom, the last link, that has our roadmap of what we're looking to really go and target for all of build as well. And I do want to highlight there is a number of new blogs that have come out. I'll dive into our AutoGen and semantic kernel work, but I do want to highlight we do have a new customer case study from the Portuguese government of how they've been using semantic kernel to be able to have an AI search agent and be able to go through that process to get it implemented. And so it's a really great read if you haven't had a chance to do that already. As I mentioned earlier, there is the integration with Bedrock agents and semantic kernel. And so there's some overview samples that Tao has provided. I've also shared out there is an amazing team that has been creating semantic kernel content in Korean, and they have a couple of additional episodes. And so if you do know of folks who would appreciate this Korean content, please share with them. We've been sharing it out with a couple other folks, but there are any individuals that would benefit from this, to let them know. And then Evan had mentioned around some of the updates, there's a new blog that he has out around the chat history reducer and being able to use some of that in Python as well. Anything on that end, Evan, that you want to highlight for the chat history reducer?
No, I mean, just essentially it's a drop-in for chat history. So, in Python, I think it's done a little bit differently than in .NET. Anywhere if chat history is used, you can just drop in a chat history reducer and get the benefit of either truncating or summarizing, or if adding message async to the chat history, you can do an auto reduce as well. And so that's all covered in the blog post, some examples pointing to samples. And so if you're Python users or you know people using Python and it would be beneficial, please point it out. Always provide feedback. We love it. So thank you.
Perfect. And then the one that I want to highlight in particular is our work with AutoGen. We have a part two of our ongoing partnership with them. And so I wanted to take a minute to highlight this. This isn't by any means the end of our partnership journey. There'll still be additional work that we'll be doing, especially post build. This is really around the multi-agent framework in AutoGen for 0.2 and being able to have that shared runtime and being able to have that same experience across both Semantic Kernel and AutoGen. I know we've had a number of customers and folks who have highlighted wanting the same functionality that you get in AutoGen multi-agents and Semantic Kernel. And so we're on the road for being able to have those pieces. And so this goes through in detail and actually provides some sample code both from the Semantic Kernel side and from AutoGen of what that would look like. And so if you haven't had a chance to take a look, I'd recommend that as well. And I think with that, there's some other updates we have from the engineering team and the recording. There's some updates around real-time audio that is going in, and we'll have additional blog posts out that I will be able to share with folks in the upcoming office hours. But I think I'd love to turn it over to just open discussion. Evan, do you want to come off of mute?
Yeah, I just want to make a clarification for the AutoGen stuff. So Python, we support AutoGen 0.2 conversible agents. This current work that we're doing with AutoGen is related around the zero point 0.4 package. So using a shared core runtime between the two, which is based on the patterns that AutoGen is doing in zero point 0.4. So more of the message passing pub sub type of patterns that would be used across processes and multi-agent scenarios. So I just want to put that out that that's currently what we're doing, investigating, doing proof of concepts around.
Perfect. Are there any questions that folks have on the AutoGen and semantic kernel work in particular? I know we've seen questions in GitHub discussions and other places, but is there any additional questions that folks may have?
I do have a question. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Love to hear from you.
Uh, yeah, I've got a couple of them. But starting up with the process framework specifically, um, we were evaluating it internally, and then I started looking at the semantic kernel repo, and I've seen a couple of improvements going on over there, specifically around process framework. So I was not sure that the samples which have been provided with the with a very good detail within getting started with processes project are going to be following, or you can say our final in our final state, or they will be changing drastically. This is just a concern because if we are going to design or architect our solution in that aspect, we should be at least um, not expecting any breaking changes. So this is just a question to Ivan, maybe to you, that are we expecting anything crazy changes from the .NET side, um, or will it be or will it remain, and we will have like improvements, but not anything which is super drastic change?
Yeah, good question. So I think the TLDR is there are changes coming, and we're trying to get the changes in as soon as possible. So, I mean, given that we're in experimental, of course, we try very hard not to break people. We really think about how we can improve the abstractions without causing breaking changes, but some of these are going to be necessary to get processes to where we need them to be. For example, using the common runtime between AutoGen and Semantic Kernel, it's probably going to change some of the patterns a bit. Hopefully,
Yeah.
a little more abstracted away from the user that doesn't cause you too much angst, but
Hmm.
there are things in like, working on these external events and handling cloud events and
Yeah.
external buffers and such. Like these are things we're trying to solve as quickly as possible so that we can provide value without, hurting you as you're building on top of them. And so with
Makes
that
sense.
said, really trying to keep it as deep as possible so it really doesn't cause you too many issues. But one thing that
Hmm.
we're going to be doing is we're simplifying the need right now. Like if you have Dapper runtime or local runtime, these are pretty kind of separate things going on. And what this common runtime is, as we're calling it, kind of core runtime, it should help reduce the need to jump between so many different packages and or objects and such. Um, so that's kind of a little hand wavy because
Yeah.
we're really kind of in the thick of it right now, trying to
No,
make
no, it makes
improvements.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense. I think we having worked now been working with semantic kernel for about more than a year now. I've seen that how much is the change, um, how much the change we can expect when it is in the experimental state. Like for example, we were working with the agent framework. We just
Hmm.
have to great work by the team. Like we just had to change like we had to make slightly changes to when we migrated our existing agents to the Azure AI agent service. So which was
Hmm.
really a good segue from here that they yes, I know about the process framework because it is a brand new thing. As in, agent framework was already there. So Azure AI agent service wasn't much of a big, you can say, a leap from our side. But
Right.
I think that makes sense to me now, Evan. So thank you for that.
Sure.
I have got another question, and that's around the real-time API. So we have got a product offering going on, which is under development. Of course, there are certain offerings from our side around Dynamics 365 customer service contact center, which is just a product, right? And we can't really add a lot of customizations to it. But there is another, you can say, um, a basic or innovative offering which we are trying to build is using semantic kernel and Azure Communication Service. So as soon as we started looking into this, we figured out that there was a blog post popped up, and but sadly it was all around Python. Um, and when we saw that the capability was there in cement in .NET as well, and we saw one of the samples, but that sample was not just doing anything more than what it was doing within the .NET vanilla, you can say OpenAI, like the one which we already have it with the I think it's .NET SDK for OpenAI. It wasn't doing much except for enabling it for the function calling, which is good. But we appreciate if we can get like the first class sample or any more information, not the sample, more information around like in the documentation for the real-time APIs. Right now, there's not much in the documentation for the .NET specifically. For Python, we have seen that there is a very good demo within ACS as well. That's not a problem. We have already created that capability. So I would love to show sometime next time that how we are using ACS with semantic kernel. So that is going on. But we will appreciate that if we can add more, um, value additions to our offering, if we had some more clear documentation, because it gives us some more ideas and gives our engineers more ideas as what we can bring it to the table, specifically those ones who are product um, owners, not super deep dive or deep tech, don't have deep technical knowledge to get into GitHub and peek in the code of engineers who are doing it.
Yeah, really great feedback. I really appreciate that. That is something that's top of mind. Is I know that we've gotten all of our Python documentation on real time. Just updated very shortly ago, and so that is something on the .NET side that we will be having updates. And I'm happy to chat with you in addition of when we see that coming when we circle back with the team. But definitely appreciate. I know that you've given us a lot of really great feedback on documentation of how to make sure that we're meeting every developer, whatever stage they're at in it. And so that is definitely something that we have on our radar to get in on the .NET side. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and about like feature parity, I mean, yes, this particular time Python went in first. We try our best to work on things in parallel, but as juggling resources, .NET has specific features they're working on, Python does as well, and so it's going to be coming to .NET. The one you pointed out is kind of the break glass scenario that people really wanted to get using the real-time API as fast as possible while we worked on our abstractions. It's a very complex feature. And so we wanted to make sure that we can get people up and running with whether through WebRTC or whatever other way we support it as quickly as possible. And so us doing the heavy lifting on the abstractions took a little bit of time. The ADR is in, so .NET should be able to follow when they have planning for it. So as you said, hopefully it'll become a first class semantic kernel client soon. So I can check in specifically too when it's planned for someone to pick it up, so we can kind of get an ETA for you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks so much for the questions. I'm seeing we have a few other folks on from Preezy. Thank you so much for joining. Do either of you have any questions or anything that you're working on? Really love to get your customer case study out with Blue Bungalow. Is just curious how things are going with you and if you have any specific questions as well.
Uh, Thank you, guys. I just have a question because we are trying to implement very soon something to test our application, and I wanted to know if there's some tool or anything that we could use to automate our tests using some AI agent or something that Semantic Kernel can provide us. Is there anything I should look into for testing?
Uh, Sorry, can you maybe provide a little more context for me? When you say testing, if there's an agent available, what?
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're able to provide more of the scenario, I think that'd really help. I'm just pulling up the documentation as well. But if there's more of what you're looking to test, that would really help Evan and I
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, sure. In my mind, I wanted to find something to test prompts and where I could input some history, like the history of the chat or something into the prompts, and this agent would spit it out and do some tests with that. I'm not sure if it's something that's achievable doing using AI or something, but what I want uh, to accomplish is orchestrate the prompts agents and yeah, like simulate a conversation basically. Is there anything I could do like in that regard, in that way, if I was clear?
So I think before people were using prompt flow, and I don't have an amazing amount of experience in that. And I think prompt flow is now making its way into Azure AI Foundry. But I don't know specifically how much is, kind of agent driven behind this. I think it's a manual process. I just pulled up some how to evaluate prompts in a playground in Foundry. I don't know if this is good. I would need to kind of dig into this a little bit more. I feel like the team is working on more kind of prompt evaluation, but I don't have specific details to. When I say the team, I mean Azure AI Foundry. I was working on prompt related, evaluations and scenarios, but I don't have a huge amount to share around that right now. But I
Oh,
would
that's
see
good.
if kind of you can take a look at what I sent,
Oh yeah,
and
I'll give it.
because there is a whole section about evaluating generative AI apps, and so there's evaluating prompts and then creating synthetic and simulated data for evaluation, local evaluation and such. So there may be some documents here that can help you.
Oh
Um,
yeah, sure. I'll
yeah.
I'll I'll read through it, and yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Because yeah, I still don't know actually which way I should take to do that, but yeah, anything is welcome.
Yeah, there's also an individual on the AI Foundry team on evaluations who I've been chatting with. Their prompt flow in the past has been one of their recommended approaches. There are potentially changes coming. So I'm happy to start an email as well with that individual outside of this office hours around some of their recommendations of what they've been seeing as well, to be able to provide more details too.
Right. Yeah, sure. Thank you. That's all from my side for now.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the question. Other questions or projects folks are working on, we'd love to hear from you.
Is it for me, this question, or
Oh, for anyone on the call, yeah, if you have anything else, but if anyone else, if there's no other questions that you have, if anyone else has questions that they want to bring to the Semantic Kernel team, if there's also, since the last time we had met, if there are new projects or new items that you've been working on with Semantic Kernel that you're, comfortable sharing out, this is recorded and posted out to YouTube. If there is anything that you would be comfortable sharing out, we always love to hear about how folks are using semantic kernel, their use cases, and any trouble that they're facing as well.
well, from my side, well, nothing from my side at the moment, nothing comes to mind, but I'll note down if I have something.
Perfect.
Yeah, I have, I guess, a question, also a thought as well. I think around that from evaluation, I think I have a contact as well, a PM that I can get you in touch, maybe Danilo, as well as Evan. Also, I'll leave you guys in. Um, and what they're doing is this obviously prompt flow is quite static by nature, where there's not, I guess, a lot of dynamics stuff that you can do within that. But you can access them programmatically as well. So not only via the UI, you can also do that via code. And yeah, probably that's something that we can play around with Daniel. So also have a question to Evan and Sophia, just around AI agent service integration, um, particularly particularly around multi-agent. Um, I think we have a repo for that, but I was just wondering, is there a document or article that highlights the agent service and semantic kernel integration?
There is. I'm grabbing the documentation update we have right now. But Evan, is there additional context with that you want to highlight as well?
I was just gonna say it's funny timing you say that because Sophia and I were just messaging before about getting a blog post out about this. Yeah, as Sophia's gonna point to in a minute, we updated our Learn site to include information now about Azure AI agents and our abstraction around them. Um, what they can be used currently today in our multi-agent patterns. As they're providing more features, like other knowledge sources with Fabric or Bing or things like that, we'll try to update our samples and show how that's used within semantic kernel. But yeah, hopefully what she just linked to is going to help you out. But if there's other specific questions you have and how we're integrating together, please do let us know.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, just have a session scheduled sometime in April that I'll try to demo around I guess semantic kernel multi-agent and AI agent service.
Great.
So yeah, keen to I guess play around with that.
Yeah, of
I'll let you
course.
know.
One thing to call out around that is we decided to kind of keep this, what I will say, loosely wrapped abstraction around the Azure AI agents. This was, you probably saw on a couple updates ago, whether in .NET or Python, that we made the same changes to the Azure or the OpenAI assistants. And what I would say, they used to be tightly wrapped abstractions where everything we had was wrapped around our particular abstractions. And it was great because it had kind of, it was easier to get up and running, but it was kind of more brittle in the sense that anytime an update was released, we had to go and change code, and our code base was growing and tests, maybe we missed something in a test and there was a bug. So we decided to kind of keep the lightly wrapped abstraction where you're creating the client, you manage it. Now you have the power to get those new features as soon as they're released as part of the underlying SDK. And our abstraction will still handle them unless there's a specific thing we need to do around content generation or something. But you'll notice probably in the samples it may look a little different than you're used to, but so far we've had good feedback around that. People haven't minded, and so we again want to hear more feedback. This particular agent isn't going to go to GA until the underlying service goes to GA, and so there is some time to get feedback to us. What we're targeting towards GA is chat completion agent and OpenAI assistance as being the first agent. So Bedrock will come later. Azure AI agent service will come a little bit later towards build. But yeah, please keep that in mind.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And I know it's very, very new, very fresh around computer using agent. Is there kind of a plan or maybe some discussion around that you could share around that integration?
Yeah, Sean yesterday did a quick comparison between OpenAI agent SDK and what Semantic Kernel has to offer. And yes, and as you just pointed out, we don't have the computer user agent yet. Something AutoGen does have as part of their Magentic 1 package. We're looking at figuring out how to kind of bring the Magentic 1 scenarios and constructs into Semantic Kernel. Whether that's kind of bringing in their abstractions to the computer agent and web surfer agent and such, or how we'll handle that abstraction. That's definitely in discussion though, and so that's something we know we need, along with the user proxy agent and other things where we have gaps here and there. So that's now that we're kind of focusing on these multi-agent patterns in the next few weeks and such, getting to build, we'll definitely have a story soon. So I'll say stay tuned, please.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you,
You're
Sean.
welcome.
Kevin. Makes sense.
Thanks so much for the question. Other questions that folks may have?
Hi, I just joined, so I might have missed the beginning of this call. Was there any discussion about abstractions when it comes to working with different sort of models from different platforms? And the reason why I'm asking is we tried to do a little bit of work with Semantic Kernel where we could potentially sort of plug and play different models. Let's say somebody wanted to use OpenAI, they could just use OpenAI. But if they want to switch to, let's say, Gemini or even a local model, they could just go and hook that up. And what I had to do was create a little bit of sort of like an abstraction with some interfaces that had sort of similar signature when it comes to regular operations like chat or file upload, etc. But because of the fact that Semantic Kernel by default relies on the in-memory stuff, but like most of the other models rely on some sort of a vector store, such as OpenAI or even the Azure OpenAI. I found it really hard to be able to implement a really good way to plug and play different models using this approach.
Yeah, thanks, Yaz. So are you using .NET or Python?
.NET for now, but yeah, I
.NET for
I
now.
would assume it's the same thing. I haven't looked into the Python version, but I assume that at least the signatures are probably the same in both. No?
Yeah, it's close. Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like you're using the agent framework is what you're alluding to when you said, OpenAI file search and such. Is that true?
Not at the moment, no. So what we were trying to do was, because this wasn't a product we were working on for a particular customer. This was more of a way for us to showcase proof of value to many customers in a sense. And we wanted to be able to like quickly compare, let's say, a particular operation, whether it's like uploading a file and getting something out of it, or just quickly go and ingest a lot of documents in some sort of a storage and be able to like quickly go and query over that, et cetera, et cetera. So what we had to do was rely on one particular platform's major features. In this case, we were mostly using OpenAI for like vector storage. And the downside was whenever we wanted to like, let's say, switch the model, we had to then change all the underlying infrastructure as well, because we couldn't rely on, let's say, OpenAI's vector store, but then use Gemini to like talk to that in a sense. So we had to like switch all the underlying things as well, which made the code a little bit messy and hard to maintain in the long run.
I see. Yeah, so I mean, there's been a lot of work done on both .NET and Python related to the memory abstractions, and it's supposed to help simplify things. So your feedback is important. When you say file, vector store from OpenAI, it's interesting because until yesterday with the response API release, there wasn't really a way to interact with a vector store and chat completions. But one thing Semantic Kernel is supposed to be doing, and I hope we are doing it okay, is just allowing you to switch between those model providers, the AI services, with essentially a line of code. You can register multiple AI services on the kernel and then register, with the service ID, you can flip between the various services. So if you want to go between OpenAI and Gemini or Mistral or something, it really shouldn't be more than a line of code in that sense. Now, as you get vector stores in, the abstractions that we have added should allow you to switch between the vector stores such as Azure AI Search, or Weaviate, or Quadrant, or Redis, or things like that. For OpenAI's, vector store, I've only used that related to the agent framework or the assistant, which is not a chat completion call,
Yeah.
But now with the responses API, we're going to be moving towards integrating that, which gives you the ability to do a vector store or a code interpreter in kind of more of a chat completion scenario. So it's, if you find it valuable, I mean, this is a great discussion to bring up on GitHub. I would love to tag Wesley, who's been working on the .NET memory abstractions, and give him some feedback or have him help provide some feedback about best use, related to this scenario. So please always know that that's an avenue, and if you're finding frustrations, do raise them so that we can help you either get unblocked or take the feedback and see how we can integrate it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. The reason why we were using that sort of on the assistant side of it, not just the regular chat, was we wanted to maintain the history on the concept of a thread. So if you had, like, let's say, multiple chats with the same agent,
Right.
you would then have all of those threads, and you could switch between them and find out, because it's really hard to be able to, like, go and start building up the chat history every single time you want to start a new thing, and specifically if you're using like a separate stack. Let's say you have a spa app, like, I don't know, React or Vue, whatever, on the
Yeah.
front end, and then using a sort of a .NET APIs, or even like all the other REST APIs, because there's no memory in there. So like if you wanted to, let's say, bring up a chat thread from before, you then had to go and build up all of those by manually, like, storing those somewhere and then bringing them back on, and just add them on before you start a new discussion with the agent. So that's why we were
Right.
sort of using the assistant from the OpenAI in that context. But what I realized was, like, most of the other ones already have similar features. Like Gemini has the same concept of a thread when it comes to assistance, and I'm sure that probably the newer agent from Azure will have it as well. And that's to do with, like, time saving. If I start a new session with my API from a front end, I shouldn't be able to, like, I shouldn't have to, like, go and build up all the other discussions before I can start a new conversation. I should be able to say, hey, I'm actually chatting based on this thread, and the agent should be already aware of all the in-memory, like whatever the store is, from that perspective.
Yep. It's actually very timely you bring this up. I just pinged an issue in the chat that Wesley is beginning to look at. And so it's not just the chat completion construct, it's more around the chat completion agent that has the in-memory you have to manage the chat history in memory, and it doesn't have a thread. So just as you said, we're starting to see that yes, having a thread to manage conversations is beneficial. And so we have someone looking into this and seeing how it can be supported. Wesley's the same person I mentioned a few minutes ago who's done the memory abstractions and such. So
Yeah.
he's been looking into it, and we'll have more to report on how we're going to begin to handle that kind of more thoroughly throughout SK so that you can get those benefits that you just pointed out.
Yeah, that's cool. And by the way, I can't use the chat for whatever reason. It's
Oh, really?
locked out for me.
Oh, no worries. I can email you that link. And then, as Evan had mentioned, that was going to be my biggest point, is that from the work Wesley's done, it should be very simple to migrate from model to model. And so if you're having difficulties, or if there are things that maybe we haven't taken into account, I would love for you to start a GitHub discussion, and we can chat. Wesley's in Europe, and so the time zone it's a little difficult for him to join this, and so we can definitely continue the conversation and GitHub discussions. But I'll email you this issue so you can track along and see as Wesley progresses with this as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback too. Very, very helpful.
And it looks like, yes, I'm not able to see your email, and so if you want to either reach out to me on Teams individually. Perfect. Other questions that folks may have, would love to hear from you. If there aren't any other questions, we can close office hours. I'm going to stay on in case there is any other questions the folks are typing or things that come up. But we really appreciate your time for joining today and answering all the questions, Evan, from your end, and for everyone contributing, giving us feedback, questions, and what you're working on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. It was really, really great discussion, I think, and look forward to connecting either on GitHub or next month.
Thank you.